I can press enter. There it goes, see? Boom. And it starts out big, and it gets smaller over time. Hey guys, what's up? In this episode, we're adding screen shake to the camera container 2D. I want to keep the introduction as short as possible, so in the description, I wrote some notes and links and stuff, so please go down there and read that. Without further ado, let's get into this. Okay, so first off, what we need to do is I'll explain exactly how we're going to be moving the camera, because basically all this is just changing the camera's position in random positions near the center of the screen. And like you saw, it's actually decreasing amplitude. So over time, the shake gets smaller and smaller. So how we're changing the camera's position is with the offset. Now, the transform should remain at 0 because that's what we're using to make the camera follow our player like thusly. Next, we need a way to trigger the screen shake. Normally what we do is we'd add spikes, and then when the player area enters the spike area, we trigger a screen shake. But for this demonstration, we're just going to be pressing the enter key. So let's go up here to the root node, and in input event, we'll say if input.isActionPressed, UI accept, then we're going to get the reference to the camera container 2D and call a function called shake. In here, we have several variables we're passing to it. We have time, or duration is what we're calling it, and that's the full duration of the screen shake. Next, we have frequency, which is the amount of spikes in a millisecond. So how we calculate that, if I get my calculator out here, we can see 1 divided by 20, that equals 0.05. So every 0.05 seconds, or milliseconds, that will trigger a spike to happen. Next, we have amplitude, which is the size of the spikes. In the script, what we're going to be doing is changing the amplitude's length or size. So it'll start out at 40 and then eventually go down to 0. So we get that big spikes at the beginning and then smaller ones at the end. Now that we have a way of calling the function, let's actually create it and create the variables that we're setting in that function call. So up here we have a lot of smaller variables, and I'm not going to explain all of them up front because you're going to forget by the time we actually get to them. So I'll just explain the necessary ones. We have shake duration and number of spikes in milliseconds, and then amplitude, and those are the 3 that we're going to be setting. Also, there's old direction, and you'll see exactly what that does in a second. So now we're going to create the shake function right here that we'll be calling from other scripts. Okay, you'll notice that the shake function doesn't have an underscore in the front. This is so that we know that it's a public function and that other nodes in the scene tree can call this function. So we set shake duration equal to duration, then remaining shake time to duration, and remaining shake time is the amount of time left to shake. So imagine if shake duration is 10, we have 10, and then it's been 5 seconds already, so 5 seconds has passed. That's 5, then it'll equal 5. So just know that shake duration does not change, while remaining shake time does get smaller and smaller over time. So this does change. Next, we have number of spikes in milliseconds, and I already showed you the calculation we did for that, 1 divided by the frequency. Then we have amplitude, that just equals amplitude, and then old direction. And old direction equals a vector 2 that has a range of -1 to 1. And we're using the rand in range function to do that on both the x and y axis. Okay, now that we have a way of setting the variables from outside the script, now we need to make the function that will actually shake the screen. There are 4 parts to this function. One of them is when to actually shake the screen. Since we want this function to be frame dependent, we're going to need delta time, so it is going to be running in process. Okay, so we created the function camera shake, and this one does have an underscore in the front, so we know that it is a private function and it's happening in here. And what I like to do with functions that are frame dependent, that run in process, is I separate them out from the actual process function. So what we're going to do is call it in process, kind of like follow target in the last episode, camera shake, and then pass it delta time. This way, the process function doesn't take up the full screen and it's easier to organize and block it out. So we can go over here and just click on whatever function we need. In this case, camera shake. There it is. So the second part to this function is deciding when it's going to be running. To do that, we're using remaining shake time. And like I said earlier, remaining shake time gets smaller and smaller the more times it runs. And eventually that will equal 0. And when it does, we're going to return in this if statement. So if remaining shake time does equal 0, we're not going to be running the function anymore. You can see down here, every time it runs, we minus delta time by remaining shake time. And if our frame rate is 60 frames a second, then delta time should equal 0.016. So that's the speed at which remaining shake time will decrease. Okay, the third part to the script is deciding when the spikes should happen. We have a way of starting the screen shake. Now we just need to decide when the screen spikes will happen. We have a way of deciding when the screen shake should stop and when it should start. Now we just need to actually code in when to trigger the spikes. And to do that, we're using _lastshooktimer and an if statement. So we see up here, _lastshooktimer is getting added to by delta time. Then we have an if statement that says _lastshooktimer, if it's greater or equal to the number of spikes in milliseconds, then we're going to shake the screen. And we're also going to minus _lastshooktimer by the number of spikes in milliseconds. So every time this gets called, we're resetting the clock for _lastshooktimer, and then it's going to count up and then shake. So it's creating a gap in the amount of spikes, which we saw over here in the calculator, 0.05. So 0.05 seconds is the gap between spikes. Okay, I believe we're on step 2. I lost track. Anyway, we know that we want the screen shake to start out big and then get smaller over time. Now, what value do we know is actually doing that currently? Easy, remaining shake time. So we're going to use remaining shake time to decrease the size of amplitude. So to do that, we're creating a variable called time left to shake, and that's just the amount of time we have left to shake. So we have shake duration minus the remaining shake time. Then we're going to use time left to shake to create a value from 0 to 1. Hence the name 0 to 1. And that equals time left to shake divided by shake duration. So let's say, we can pull out the calculator again. So let's say time left to shake is 5, right? We're 5 seconds through the 10-second long duration. Then divide that by 10. That equals 0.5. So the value we get from this calculation is always going to be either 0 or 1. We know that because a value divided by itself is going to equal 1. So we have 10 divided by 10 equals 1. And then a value, so again, we're going to use the example 10 divided by 0, and my calculator won't do it, but here we can do, we have 0.1 divided by 10, we get 0.01, which my calculator won't do it, but eventually this value will equal 0. So we can see it goes from 0 to 1. Okay, kind of a lengthy explanation for something that's pretty simple, but for me at least, math is the most complicated thing about this whole making games stuff, so I appreciate when other people take their time to go through it slowly. And if you appreciate videos like this as much as I do, then let YouTube know so they can send you more videos like this one. So yeah, click the like button. Thanks. And thanks for watching. I appreciate you watching the videos. Okay, so you may have heard of One Direction. But have you heard of New Direction? Okay, so down here, right, we have the old direction, and now we're setting the new direction. And like I said before, it's a random value between -1 to +1. And if up here, what we're doing is getting amplitude and turning it into a number that starts at 40, you know, the base amplitude, going all the way to 0, then this next part of the script is going to be adding variation to that general amplitude. So think of amplitude as the length of the spikes, and this next part of the script as the direction of the spikes. Hence the name New Direction. Okay, so now that we have New Direction, we need to make sure it's not the same as the old direction, because that's possible. Unlikely, but it is possible. So what we're going to be doing is using the old direction, subtracting New Direction from the old direction, hence continue or reverse direction. So even if it is adding to it, so like continuing in the same direction, it's going to always be greater than the number previous. It's always going to be different. Next we have distance from 0, and that equals old direction plus delta times continue or reverse direction. We're basically getting our old direction and then reversing or continuing that direction by multiplying that value by delta. So let's say the old direction is up towards the right of the screen. This delta times continue or reverse direction is it's either going to move it forward or reverse direction. Next, we can actually start setting the camera position. Okay, to do that, we need a variable called new camera position, and that equals vector2.0. And then we set new camera position equal to amplitude to 0 times distance from 0. So if this is our general amplitude, then this is the variation on the amplitude. So if amplitude equals 0, then distance from 0 isn't going to have much effect on it. Finally, we can set the camera's position. Well, not its position, but its offset. Guys, this is my 4th time recording this video, and almost every time I've forgotten to mention the NCamera. So last week what we were doing is using the $sign. Let's do it right here. So $sign and then getting a reference to the camera 2D node. And that works fine, but using a node reference, a hard-coded node reference, is way better. And what I like to do is format it as N and then the name of the node, and then just get node and then the path to it. And why I like doing it this way is because it's easier to get when auto-typing. You just type N and then camera, and then it's first thing that pops up. And it lets me know that it's a node, right? So right off the bat, I know it's a node reference. I don't have to think about it as much. And it's just a suggestion. You don't have to do it this way. You can do it your own way. You can do it the wrong way. That's none of my business. As a mere educational YouTuber, I don't get respect. So just do what you like. I don't care. So we have NCamera.setOffset, and then we set it to vector200. Even if it's continuing in the same direction, it's always going to bounce back to the start. It's not going to go bump, bump. We want it to start at the beginning, the center, every time. Then we set the offset to the new camera position. Now we just need to set the new camera position to the old camera position, and the new camera direction to the old camera direction. So we'll just throw this in right here. And one last thing before it's finally over. I know, this is a long video, but it's going to be worth it. It looks great. Now we just need to handle what actually happens when the camera's done shaking. So right here at the bottom, underneath remaining shake time, we're going to add an if statement that says if remaining shake time is less or equal to 0, then we're going to set remaining shake time to exactly 0, like up here, so it won't run anymore. Then we're going to set the offset to 0, and then the old camera position equals vector2.0, because we won't need it for this calculation. And it's important when using if statements to think about where they're actually going to go. So you're probably wondering, why not just put it up here, right? Why not just put that right there? Well, it's because this is going to return if it's 0. So let's say we do put the if statement right there. If this is going to run, and then this is going to check, okay, is it 0? And then it's going to say, no, it's not 0. Then this runs, and then it's going to be 0. So it's going to go back up here, and it's going to say, oh, it's 0, run. And then we're not going to handle any of the end screen shake logic. So when using if statements, it is important to remember where you're putting them in the script. Okay guys, before I show you the end result, I want to give you a sneak peek for the next episode we're doing, or maybe the next episode. I've been working on this new camera node. It's called Camera Room Settings. And what it does is each time you enter a new room, it resizes the camera and keeps it within bounds. It's not finished yet. It's a work in progress. But once it's done, I'll be making a new episodes about it. So look out for that. Without further ado, let us play the scene. And I can press enter. There it goes, see? Boom. And it starts out big and it gets smaller over time. And I think that looks pretty great. And again, There's the camera changing size. And last week, we didn't actually grab the coin from over here, so let's go grab that. Boom. And then now, let's change the settings real quick. So we can go up here, and let's set the screen shake to 0.5. And let's run the math on this. Let's say we set it to something like, let's set it to 60, and I'll actually show what the math looks like on that. So we have 1 divided by 60, and that equals 0.0166666667, and that is exactly 60 frames a second. So this is extremely fast. Next, we're going to set amplitude to something really small because I want it to be kind of a jitter, you know, just to show you what it's capable of. So let's set that to something like 10. Okay, so we'll run that, and I'll press enter. Nice. So see, it's a jitter. And maybe if you guys really want me to, I'll do an episode on adding spikes. That would be a fun thing to do. So if you do have any more suggestions and want to see more videos like this one, then leave a comment in the description and subscribe if you feel like it, if you like this video. If you don't like it, then I'll see you around. Hopefully I'll make another video that you do like. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you around. Bye guys.